Good afternoon, and welcome to our presentation, Going Lean with Google, Connecting with Information. My name is Travis Hessman. I'm the technology editor at Industry Week, which is producing this event. Today's webinar is sponsored by Google. During today's webinar, we are going to learn how getting connected drives lean manufacturing. At Industry Week, our mission is to connect manufacturing decision makers to share ideas and tools that inspire action. We strive to provide information that helps you make better decisions to achieve your goals. As part of this webinar, we will have a live Q&A session using questions submitted by you, our audience. Our speakers today will address as many questions as they can during the last portion of the event. If you have a question for any of the presenters, please don't wait to the end to ask it. Rather, we ask that you submit your questions as they occur to you throughout the webinar. To send your question, just type it into the Ask a Question box at the bottom left of your screen, then click the Submit button. Whenever possible, please direct your question to a specific speaker. The webinar is being recorded and will be available to you on demand for viewing after the live event. We encourage you to go ahead and direct your coworkers to the recorded presentation as well. You'll receive an email with the link to the on-demand version in a few days. The recording will also be available at industryweek.com website in our webinars area. Now, I'd just like to cover a few housekeeping items to get everyone connected before we get started. First, please disable your pop-up blockers during this event. If you're using Internet Explorer, you can disable your blocker by going into the Tools menu, clicking Internet Options, and then choosing the Privacy tab up at the top. If the presenter slides are not advancing, or if you're having any problems with the audio, try pressing the F5 key at the top of your keyboard. That'll refresh the webinar console on your screen. To adjust the volume, just look for the volume control slider in the lower right corner of your screen. You may also need to adjust the master volume in your computer system. Also in the lower right corner, you should see several buttons. The Launch Survey button brings up a feedback form, which I'd like for you to complete at the conclusion of the presentations. We'll also push that survey out to you as we approach the end of the event. Next, the Full Screen Mode button lets you enlarge the webinar player. And below that, you'll see the Download Slides button, which links to a PDF of all the presenters' slides so you can save or print the presentations. And finally, the Help button brings up a series of troubleshooting tips. So, with that, let's get started. Kicking things off today is Julia Town, head of the manufacturing industry at Google. Julia has a career of over 20 years in the enterprise information technology industry. She spent 12 years with Documentum EMC, leading the vertical strategy that was showcased in Jeffrey Moore's best-selling book, Crossing the Chasm. Julia spent the last 5 years at Google helping global manufacturing accounts, and before that graduated magna cum laude from DePaul University. So, with that, I'll hand it over to you, Julia.
Thanks, Travis. Hello and welcome to our webinar about lean manufacturing and how Google can help you get there. We have a great program for you today, and we will start with industry expert Mike Orzen. He'll tell you a little bit about lean manufacturing and what it means to your overall IT efforts and business. Then we'll be joined by two of Google's customers, Katz America and Shaw, and they will tell us how they've used Google to connect their business, improve information flow, and become lean. But before we get started, let's take a minute to see a real-life example of using Google Apps and the cloud to become more lean and efficient.
So yeah, I think we're good. I think that about wraps it up. So
great. I'll send a follow-up email.
There's nothing much to follow up on. So
Well, we should regroup.
We just regrouped. This is the regrouping.
Cool, I'll ping you later.
You're pinging me now. What do you want to ping about?
Next steps?
There are no next steps. We just solved it.
Huh. All right.
So next slide. So that video is a great example of how Google can change the way we think, even about the most simple things like a business meeting. So imagine how streamlined communications could improve your manufacturing practices. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Mike Orzen is a founder and president of Mike Orzen & Associates and the co-author of Lean IT, Enabling and Sustaining Your Lean Transformation. He is an internationally recognized trainer and keynote speaker and faculty member of the Lean Enterprise Institute. He holds degrees from Stanford University, the University of Oregon, as well as certifications in management accounting, production, inventory control, project management, Six Sigma, and Agile. I'll now pass the baton to Mike.
Thanks, Julia. Next slide, please. Let's just jump right into this. So the principal focus of Lean, as most of our listeners probably are familiar with, is delivering value to the customer as efficiently and effectively as possible. We refer to this as flow, and it's achieved by the systematic elimination of waste and ongoing process improvement. Often we refer to this as value stream improvement. But it's not that easy. You know, we can talk about delivering value to the customer, and we can all agree that this is important, but it's very much like the picture you see on your screen. If value is that fish in the stream, sometimes it feels like we're swimming upstream trying to deliver that value to our customer. Why is this the case? Typically, it's because we have an amazing amount of waste in our processes. When we use the term waste, what we're talking about is anything that we do that doesn't directly add value from the customer's perspective. What does that mean? Well, this could be defects in the way we produce our parts, our products. It could be mistakes that we make. Anything that leads to non-value added activities such as rework, quality issues, product returns, expedited shipment, dealing with unhappy customers. It's all the excess effort and motion that we see in most organizations. How does this relate to what we're talking about today in information? Well, think about all the time that is spent hunting for information, determining what version of the truth is valid, and deciding what actions we need to take to actually flow value. So when we think about Lean and delivering value to the customer, we need to specifically talk about the elimination of waste. Let's go a little deeper on this. Next slide, please. So waste really can be thought of in many ways, but one important way to consider this is three different versions or variations of waste that we see throughout just about every manufacturing operation on the planet. The first one I like to call unnecessary complexity. And this inevitably arises in any course of business, and it's specifically true in the course of working together, people trying to collaborate to make timely decisions and to do the right thing. Next slide. So this includes everything from over-engineering to unnecessarily complex processes, or simply building too much inventory because we don't really have a key perspective or understanding of customer demand. But it also includes things like wasted employee creativity and the amount of time that employees waste just trying to get the job done. So many organizations I talk to, people describe their job as an endless battle of firefighting. So wasteful activity can often be found in the way that we communicate with each other or with our trading partners. So generally, how we interface across our organization is a direct reflection of the quality and effectiveness that our organization brings to the market. So ask yourself, how do we coordinate? How do we communicate? How do we collaborate internally and externally? If the answer is we struggle with it, well, what's the perception in the marketplace? It's probably similar. So a common example of unnecessary complexity is where there are multiple sources and versions of what I call the truth. In other words, multiple versions of documentation within the company. What happens is people are forced to spend a great deal of their time searching for the information they need, deciphering what that information may be, and making sense of conflicting information, finally determining what they think is the accurate and correct information, and then defending their interpretation or version of the truth. This is classic unnecessary complexity, and what it does is drain people of precious time and energy and prevent them from focusing on the issues that really matter most, which are driving higher quality, delivery performance, productivity, and ultimately creating a great customer experience. So a second contribution to waste beyond unnecessary complexity is variation. Variation in the way we design products, the way we manufacture products, the way we perform tasks, and even variation in the way that we get our work done. So when we talk about variation, one important area is how we work together and how we collaborate, how we address problems like version control. So I like to say variation is the enemy of quality and consistency. So quality and consistency is what our customers expect, it's what they demand, and it's what they're paying for. If we have high levels of variation, we have low levels of quality, and we're obviously very inconsistent in our production processes and what we deliver. So when it's hard to access documents, when we have multiple versions of drawings, work instructions, bills of material, routers, what happens is customer communications force people, once again, to pick what information they're going to rely on. Or I've seen people become so exhausted they simply guess when doing their work. They simply guess. What this does is introduce built-in inherent variability into our work processes and all but guarantees inconsistency in output. And that often manifests in more non-value-added rework, late shipments, returns, and warranty claims. So one organization that I worked with not too long ago was in this situation, and they constantly were experiencing stockouts. Either they were purchasing too much material or not purchasing enough. And at the end of the day, they had an inability to tell their customers when their order was going to ship. So what happened was they ended up performing a number of mission-critical calculations in spreadsheets that had no version control, no shared access, and no consistency. Again, high variation in the way that they managed information. Well, when they addressed these issues as part of their lean manufacturing transformation, the company was able to grow their business from $140 million to $210 million without adding a lot of overhead, and at the same time, they improved their operating margin by 12 points. Pretty impressive. Finally, we need to address a third area of waste, and this is one that's often isn't really talked about, but I think it's very, very important, and that has to do with stress. Stress also hinders the flow and has a major effect on our ability to deliver. So consider the stress that so many of us are experiencing from trying to get information out of our old legacy systems. I've worked with several companies that force their managers to sit through the dreaded production planning meeting every morning. Now what this looked like, and maybe some of our listeners are familiar with this, is people sat around a table and reviewed the backlog compared to the WIP report, the work in process report, and line by line asked the team that was sitting there, and usually this is 12 to 15 people, is this order going to ship on time? They did this for every item on the backlog that was due over the next 2 weeks. So the production managers would provide their opinions, discuss the challenges of a particular order, commit to expediting a particular order, reprioritize work in their area, and make notations on the WIP report. Those meetings were typically scheduled for 1 hour, and if you got out of there in 2 hours, you felt like it was a good day. They were stressful, they were tedious, and they drained people of energy at the start of the day. And at the same time, the meetings tend to focus more on placing blame, why didn't that product ship or why is it in trouble, than they really focused on improving delivery performance. Perhaps what's really worse is that these types of meetings can be all but eliminated when we've got 3 things in place. Number 1, there's a common version of the truth. Number 2, people trust the available information. And number 3, people are allowed to reinvest the time lost in those stressful and unproductive meetings on more rewarding activities. Activities that include solving real problems on the shop floor, developing skills in their people, meeting with customers, and basically trying to drive the flow of value to the customer. So we shouldn't be sitting in these non-value-added meetings, particularly when they can be eliminated. Last slide, please. So you might be saying, okay, this makes sense. We want to increase the flow to the customer, but we've got waste, variation, and stress in our way. That all sounds good, but we're also on a Google webinar. So what does all this have to do with one another? Well, the answer is the cloud. It's basically IT's answer to lean, and it's why we're here today talking with Google. The cloud is a relatively new phenomenon in manufacturing, and it's something that we're all using every day, whether we know it or not. If you use web-based email or get online to check your bank balance, you're using an online application. You're using the cloud. Basically, the concept is that one company, in this case Google, buys and maintains the hardware and the software and keeps it up to date, working properly. Basically, businesses pay a subscription fee to access it and configure it how they want to use it. But the impact of this model, and that is of a shared resources model, instead of everyone buying their own hardware and software, is absolutely profound. Why? Well, let's look at those three different variations of waste. First of all, it reduces waste. Since you don't have to buy hardware and software and maintain them, you aren't spending and investing a great deal of time, money, and energy in what I call non-value-added IT. Non-value-added IT is running around trying to upgrade people's machines to make sure they're on the same version of software, trying to figure out why we've got multiple locations of storage, and trying to figure out basically where the right information is buried. Instead, IT can focus on delivering the appropriate information to the people that need it so they can get their work done. Number two, it reduces variation. Since the cloud application is centrally managed, there's only one version of the application, so everybody's on the most current version. Everyone's using the same app. Everybody's storing their documents in the same location. And because of it, there's only one version of the truth. So what we do is we allow companies like Google to put their energy into ensuring everyone is accessing apps. They're getting fast performance and high reliability. We get out of the business of basically IT infrastructure, and we get into the business of creating value. Last but not least, let's talk about stress. The cloud also reduces stress because it's actually easy to work on a cloud-based application. It's mobile ready, so anybody in your workforce that needs to access the information can do so anywhere, from their phone, from a browser. It really doesn't matter. So there's no stress around upgrades because they automatically happen, and they happen in the background. No one's even aware of them. So the cloud is certainly more secure. I've worked with several companies that are investing huge amounts of funds trying to create security within their own infrastructure, when organizations such as Google can afford to employ the world experts to focus and create an army of security experts. Most companies can't afford that, and most companies shouldn't afford that. That's not where we want to invest our bandwidth. So security, in a lot of ways, if you think about it, is really the cloud's main business. It's what they do better than we do. It's not a core competency of most organizations, and it shouldn't be, not when you're using a cloud-based application. The result of all of this is that IT can shift their focus. So instead of delivering basic functionality of applications and trying to keep systems up, they could start to really focus on moving away from infrastructure and application upgrades and struggling with security issues to enabling your people, and as well as your trading partners and your customers, to focus on the flow of value. In other words, you focus on deploying lean manufacturing across your entire enterprise. Next slide, please. So I'd like to close my discussion, my piece, with a short story about increased flow of value to a specific customer. I worked at a manufacturing organization that quoted our customers an 8-week lead time, but we consistently shipped in about 13 weeks. Our customers quickly learned that they needed to order 13 weeks out or even more to have a chance for us to ship their orders on time. So customers began to rely on their forecasted demand to order that far out. They knew if they waited 8 weeks to place their order, there was no way they were going to see it in less than 13. So what happened was they started to rely on their forecast, and they placed what we call soft orders with us. Well, what happened is about 9 to 10 weeks out, they would call up and begin canceling orders that had been forecasted but not actually been made by their customers. So the orders were soft and they had not actually materialized. This in turn forced us, the manufacturer, to cancel the jobs that were already in process. What we ended up doing is storing partially completed work in hopes that the customer would eventually reorder, or in some cases we just simply scrapped the parts. So we were stuck in what we call the death spiral, where our inability to keep our promises to our customers had actually trained those same customers to place their orders earlier, and those orders were not firm. This in turn caused our lead times to increase even further beyond 13 weeks, as we were forced to resort to expediting, overtime, next day freight, all in an attempt to catch up. So this in turn introduced even more waste, more variation, and more stress, and only made matters worse. So our leadership team got together, and we knew we had to do something radically different or be at risk of losing key customers. And that's when we decided to adapt towards a plan of lean manufacturing in our environment. An essential key component of that effort was getting a handle on the waste, variation, and stress associated with the way that we access, shared, and managed our information. In the end, it took about 2 years. We reduced a 13-week lead time down to less than 3 weeks. We experienced dramatic gains in quality and margin and actually turned the company around. And with that, I'll hand it back to Julia.
Thanks, Mike. So when you talk about flow, it's something that resonates loudly with us at Google. So when we think about flow, we think about how information flows back and forth among employees, partners, customers, and how important that is for success. We like to talk about connections and how a connected manufacturer enjoys a greater flow between all these important stakeholders. From the executive suite all the way to the factory floor through to fulfillment, it is more important than ever for everyone to be on the same page, whether that's through smarter email or better collaboration on documents or better access to information in the legacy systems. Connecting employers with information and each other can make the difference between a better product, more efficient production, or just-in-time delivery. And it's through this connection, that improved information flow, that Google can help companies become lean, and everyone on the same page with the right information at the right time. And it's exactly the kind of practices that define lean manufacturing. So next slide. And the next slide. So part of our mission at Google is to help our customers identify ways to redefine their approach to achieve their strategic goals with our tools. So let's just take a couple minutes to help you see Google solutions to your business challenges through these lean principles. So when we at Google think about reducing unnecessary complexity, we think of using Google Apps to connect and geospatial products to visualize information. So with Google Apps, we can help your employees connect, create, and collaborate using tools like Google Docs, Google Sites, Google Calendar for real-time collaboration in the browser, allowing people to work together better. And with Google's Geo products, manufacturers can visualize the geographically dispersed links of a supply chain on a map, simplifying these inherently complex relationships. Also, the Google Cloud Platform leverages Google's immense infrastructure and can help reduce variation across manufacturing organizations. So as you can build your own applications that cost-effectively scale up and down based on ever-fluctuating demand. And then if we think about the lean concept of reducing stress that Mike talked about, we think about Search and Chrome, our products. With Google search, all the information in your organization, be it an email, ERP data, HR files, really anything is searchable with the Google's world-famous search technology. And it saves tons of time and aggravation, relieving stress all along the way. And if you think about Google Chrome, relieves IT stress because it's dead simple to use and has everything your people need in one place. No more learning new interfaces or juggling different kinds of hardware. Whether it's a phone, a tablet, or Google's own Chromebooks, it's all the same experience. So it's through these 5 products that are our platform that the Google manufacturing solutions are built upon that help our clients become more lean. Next slide. And what we've heard from our clients is that these technologies have helped them become more lean organizations. And it's part of the reasons why we have 5 million businesses signed up with Google Enterprise already. Next slide. And yes, as you can see, a lot of these are manufacturing companies as well. They tell us that using Google Solutions has made working together and delivering value through the entire supply chain much easier. So before we hear from our next 2 clients, let's watch a fun video of what being lean looks like in one of our most important and dreaded tasks, creating and sharing documents. So next, I'm pleased to welcome Tom Maraca, who is the Director of Marketing at Katz America. Katz is a leading manufacturer and distributor of pulpboard beverage coasters. Through Tom's work at Katz, he's been able to create a practical approach to problem solving and customer service, and the Katz story with Google is a great example of this. I'll now hand it over to Tom.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Google, for inviting me to be a part of this. Katz America probably isn't a household name. However, if you set your beverage down at a local watering hole, chances are it was on top of one of our beverage coasters. Through the first decade of the 21st century, Katz solidified its position as a service-driven solution for advertising through beverage coasters to become the global leader with approximately 90% of North America and 60% of the globe in terms of share of beverage coaster manufacture. We pride ourselves on innovating our processes and our products and supporting our environmental sustainability. We experienced some very interesting growth, however, in the past 15 years that posed a challenge to continue those points of focus. This period saw us begin as a single location in Buffalo, New York, to a multi-location international company with offices as south as Bogota, Colombia, to finally a member of a global powerhouse in the paper and printing industry with over 20 locations globally. As we encountered these growth periods, both through organic market growth and through mergers and acquisitions, we realized we were going to need scalable information technology solutions to allow us to continue to deliver the service levels expected from our customers and to minimize the pain that growth normally creates internally. We needed a platform to help us manage that growth incrementally, but at the same time support our endeavors to reach new markets without misstep. Next slide, please. We had a hodgepodge of different technologies, and it all centered around Microsoft 2003, patched together with some small file sharing servers that really didn't support our growth. Performance wasn't great, and we would often encounter quality of service issues. Expanding the networks across multiple locations created what looked to be a very daunting, long-term, and heavy investment to prepare ourselves for anticipated growth, which I'm sure much of you would agree it's not always realized. The scenario of staying with the similar technology that we had in-house while merely upgrading releases and hardware was really just setting ourselves up for a similar situation we found ourselves in at the time, with a very high upfront investment with a long lock-in to continue to use the Microsoft platform. And obviously that didn't sit well with us as we continue to fine-tune our micro-budgeting abilities. We looked into multiple options, including Outlook 365, but those options rarely reduced the time investment required in-house to maintain the infrastructure, and that obviously wasn't a suitable solution either. And on top of that, the other solutions were actually pretty close to the same cost to maintain it on a year-to-year basis. Finally, we looked at Google. Next slide, please. I came to Google personally through my own interest in research, and I knew that I liked using it. There was something special knowing that a service provider such as Google is improving its products for you even when you weren't asking for it, or even if you knew those improvements were necessary. We had spoken with a few approved vendors for enterprise. Each of them excelled in their own way in a different Google solution, but eventually we brought in Google's premier business partner, Dido, to provide a more formal business evaluation of our needs. When they showed us what the cost implications would be and the deployment time, et cetera, it made changing to Google very easy. 3 months after this decision was made, we implemented NG Day, or Go Live Day as we called it, was the smoothest technology upgrade to date for Katz. The Google Apps environment is, in a word, intuitive. It acts as the user assumes it would, and this allows for us to deploy any of our technology related to Google much more smoothly to our users. Taking the hardware out of the balance sheet and having no rainy day fund or service contracts allows us to focus resources in other areas such as innovation or improving communication methods with ourselves and our external customers. Next slide, please. And this is where our lean story begins and how the flow of information became so much easier. There was some pushback on the C-level because of productivity concerns. Old habits obviously die hard. That lasted about a week or two. When the mobility and the communication of our top and middle tier colleagues immediately improved with the use of Google Apps, it was evident that acceptance across the board will be realized very easily and quickly. Having Google has also changed the way the office works internally. The legacy roadblocks of opening up email and sending attachments, et cetera, are all gone now. Now it's just all in your face. It's wherever you are or wherever you'll be. Co-working and collaboration does not get suspended like it once did. Sharing documents are being edited on the fly, even from mobile browsers, and not just through the robust proprietary Drive and Gmail apps. While someone is traveling to a customer, their support team is assembling the tools needed to respond to the needs of our customers, and on top of that, we get rid of revisions by having a living and working document existing in front of all participating parties. I've actually had coworkers say, let's say I've been traveling, I've had coworkers say when I've landed, I've updated this file for you per your request and it's waiting for you in Drive, which is a feeling like no other. No more send and receive, check spam, download attachments or size requirements. Chat also has created a more lean communication environment. The Google Talk platform allows for face-to-face video conferencing contained within the same suite of activities that the rest of our information resides. One window or one device allows us to use all of our communication platforms at once. Say if someone was on a call or even away from their desk, the chat option minimizes the nonverbal communication one step further than if you were to, say, email someone. And it inherently minimizes what waste is left behind after the communication ends. If you're also one of those people who would rather not send minimalistic emails and would rather get quick answers either face-to-face or over the phone, the chat option gives a nice alternative. It literally takes physical steps out of your office workday. It provides immediate support for video conferencing and text chatting where multiple parties in different areas of the world can meet face-to-face from any seat, whether they be at a home office or at another location. It's all increased information flow in a big way for us. It's improved the way we work together, and through all of this and some mood lighting, it's improved the demeanor in the office, I could say. Next slide, please. Our industry is somewhat commoditized, so the differentiation in our world is about customer service. Historically, customer service meant just providing good service after a customer has made an order. But in the last 3 to 5 years, we've been working pretty steadily and investing heavily in marketing ourselves as delivering a product that is more than just the beverage coaster. From an internal cultural standpoint, this always meant over-delivering to our customers and overwhelming them with our service. And to our customers, it means adding value to a product that normally would reside in a catalog of a distributor, which is just not how we want to exist. Google has enhanced the way we do both of those things. It's allowed us to be more responsive to customer requests, and it's minimized the time it takes from handshake to delivery. The steps have been reduced, the interactions are more meaningful and content-rich, and that obviously goes a long way for our customers or our prospective customers. Since going live with Google, we've been able to decrease lead times and even implemented a rush program, turning around finished product in 5 days instead of 15. The root of our efficiency improvements can be directly tied back to improved content-rich communication and a reduction in time and energy waste related to communications. Now with Google's help, we've had a better ability to answer the questions on the spot. As we all are seeing, we're becoming more mobile. We need more materials to travel with us without any delay or missteps. And our cache of sales and service tools such as price lists and art samples and mock-ups and the campaign examples, they can all sit comfortably in Google Drive. So no matter what we encounter when we're on the road or if we have requests from our customers, we have a solution to put in front of them immediately. And Drive has made it possible to be more mobile, and it's amazed our customers. When we meet them at trade shows, they might have questions about our company or what the coaster might look like, and using Drive and the way it makes working with creative team back at our headquarters so much easier and faster, we can have something for a prospective customer to look at immediately. And to be able to sit down and talk to them with their design in my hand on my mobile phone makes a huge difference. I think this is what Mike refers to as the flow of value to the customer in running lean. They see value from our company so much faster, and we see the order-to-cash process sped up. And Google has really helped us do all those things. So thank you. Back to you, Julia.
Thanks, Tom. So that was a great story, and I love to hear how Google connects a company, increases flow, helps drive value to their customers. Looks like your organization has become more lean with that trade show story. So now, before we go to Jim at Shaw, let's watch another short video on how they use Google.
Shaw actually started in the mid-'60s. Our facilities and people have always been local, part of Northwest Georgia. A lot of our associates have been here 20, 30, 40 years, and so they have a real passion for the business.
You've got all these different moving parts, from sales and marketing to manufacturing to distribution to the back office. We really want to make sure that the tools that we are providing are going to work any place, anywhere, anytime. Google Apps allows us to blend all of that way of working into one cohesive environment.
I call my smartphone my mobile office. I was checking emails. I've gotten like 10 emails since I've been standing here. As I'm going from point A to point B, a lot of times I'm getting asked a bunch of questions, asking to follow up on different projects. I keep all of my project files on Google Drive, and it allows me to either share or access that information. It just reduces the amount of work you have to do to share information with others.
When we need to collaborate with other countries, we could be working at 8 o'clock in the morning and it's 8 o'clock at night in China, and we'll start up a chat session with them and be able to collaborate with them real time on the same document easily and very fluidly. The miles between us don't matter as much anymore. There is a sense of community that's built that you can't get in email.
Passion comes from the fact that people care about the business, they care about the customer, they care about each other. I think manufacturing is strong in Northwest Georgia. We're going to be here 50 years from now and 100 years from now.
Another great story. So we welcome now Jim Nielsen from Shaw, who has over 30 years of experience in the IT industry. He currently guides the long-term direction of the end-user technologies that we use across all of Shaw and ensures day-to-day adherence to standards and practices. He partners with vendors and equipment manufacturers to ensure the right equipment is being deployed that the best fits any given business need, while maintaining an overall pulse on the quality and reliability of all those products. His scope allows the company to investigate new technologies and apply them where they will be most useful, which brings him to our webinar today. Now we welcome Jim Nielsen from Shaw.
Thank you, Julia. Next slide, please. I want to start out with a brief history of Shaw. The Philadelphia Carpet Company was established 167 years ago in 1846. 100 years later, Shaw itself was founded as the Star Dye Company, a small company that dyed tufted scatter rugs. In 1967, Shaw acquired Philadelphia Carpet Company, and we've been growing ever since. In 2001, we were brought into the Berkshire Hathaway family, and today we are the largest carpet manufacturer in the world with over $4 billion in revenue and 23,000 employees, with floor coverings as diversified as solid woods to carpet tile to sports turf and landfill coverings. Like Katz, we aspire to grow our sustainability. The photo that you see here is a representation of our recycling process as we grow our industry-recognized cradle-to-cradle efforts. Next slide, please. As mentioned by Mr. Orzen, we need and are constantly looking to eliminate confusion, waste, stress, variation, the essence of lean. To effect this, we needed easier to use and reliable tools internally. We were a Lotus Notes shop for email, calendar, and contacts, as well as over 150 internally written applications, and we were feeling the pain. It was expensive to maintain. People could not collaborate. We didn't have transparency into who was using what and how. Lotus Notes alone required 3 full-time people just to keep it up and running, plus many developers and local experts. We wanted them to do something more with their own time than just Lotus Notes. When we looked at Google, we saw huge savings over Lotus. We were a little worried about the security, but then we really started doing a deep dive, and we spoke with 2 Google customers, Bilo stores and the state of Wyoming, and it was clear that Google had security covered. We did our own investigation to confirm this as well. We also got much better transparency into what our employees were using and how. And those 3 full-time employees who used to maintain Lotus, one is now a manager over availability, the sub-admin works as a DBA, and the third is now working as a second and third level support person in another part of the IS organization. We asked Google for the best integration partner possible in our area, and we used Cloud Sherpas at their suggestion to help us deploy. They were a huge help, making the deployment much easier than we could have ever done on our own. Maybe the most important thing about Google was that it was built to help make our business more connected and increase the flow of information with our employees and our partners. And it really helped us to become lean. Next slide, please. The first example of us becoming more lean is increased connection and information flow in our marketing departments. Before we even implemented Google, marketing had come to the IS organization with a business case for a more collaborative way to work and share documents amongst one another as well as their partners. So we put them into our proof of concept with Google. Once that proof of concept was completed, they came back and said, we don't care what you do with the tools, we're going to continue to use them, and you're going to make sure that we have that opportunity. So our marketing department works with outside ad agencies to make print and television ads, and each ad is a highly iterative, collaborative project. So marketing wanted to have a media repository to share with external ad agencies, other marketing companies, and vendors. Rather than just have a file sharing tool, they needed to collaborate. And the Office products that we were using really aren't conducive to collaborating. You'll have emails with attachments and 15 different copies with small edits, and typically they're sent, or they send out emails with multiple versions, and someone had to compile it all, and marketing was definitely feeling the pain. So now if they write copy for print or TV ads, they all work together on a single document online at the same time or at their leisure, but there's still, as was mentioned earlier, there's one version of the truth. Next slide, please. So finance also became more lean with Google. Originally, our budgets were started at the beginning of July, or the budgeting process, and ran through the end of September. And it was, I think, a typical budgeting process. Budgets are submitted through Excel, revised, resubmitted, and so forth until finally approved. Needless to say, this process was fraught with waste and variance and stress, and the process was anything but lean. So finance is constantly sending attachments back and forth. Formulas can break. Versioning becomes problematic. That's part of the reason the process takes 3 months. But since we've moved our process to Google, we've shaved off about 2 months of that process. So now instead of starting in July, we begin at the end of August, and simply because of scheduling, it still takes us a month, but that doesn't have anything to do really with the collaboration process any longer. It saves a ton of cycles on the budget and allows us to focus on other more value-added priorities. Next slide, please. But it's not just the marketing and finance groups. We saw a ton of increased connection, communication, and flow of information across the whole company. We have over 200 global locations using Google Docs and spreadsheets more and more. Lots of time savings in meetings and in processes. People just started using Hangouts, even non-technical people. There was a network effect of people using Google Apps. It actually dropped demand on our networks, which we were surprised at. We were told that it would drop our demand on the network, but we were still surprised to actually see it. The other thing that it did for us is people that were 20 minutes away from each other were using Hangouts instead of driving to meetings within adjacent facilities. It gave our employees sometimes an hour back in their day based on the meetings that they would have to attend previously. We saw a tremendous increase in the number of devices, the mobile devices requested to access the corporate data through Google. And again, because we did the deep dive in the security aspect, we understood that we can control what it was that or who was accessing it, when, and all of that, and that eased a lot of apprehension around that. We see a lot of people still needing some type of training, but it's a very intuitive environment, and the training that we did implement up front, it took a couple of hours via recorded videos and conference calls, and the recorded videos are still out there for use later on and by new employees as they come on. So there's a training aspect that's ongoing, but it's minimized because of the intuitive nature of the environment. Overall, the Google toolset offering at Shaw has been a tremendous benefit, and associates are still excited, even a year in, a little over a year in, and IS has been able to provide the tools to allow the teams to become more effective. And then we can get out of the way, which is one of the things that IS IT has always been accused of, is kind of getting in the way of processes. And this is one of the tool sets that we've been able to enable our associates to become more productive and not stand in the way of their tasks. So this is how we're becoming more and more lean with the Google products, and so far it's been great, and we look forward to a much more productive growth path in our collaboration efforts. If you go to the next slide, and I'll turn it back to Julia.
So thanks, Jim. So another compelling story. So just to quickly recap, lean is about the flow of value to the customer. But we have these issues, complexity, variation, and stress, that make flow really difficult. So our challenge is to eliminate complexity, standardize processes, and relieve stress on the organization in order to increase flow. This is what being lean and getting lean is all about. So hopefully you could see from our customer examples how Google and the cloud can really help increase flow, reduce that complexity, variation, and stress, and in the end made their organizations more lean. So with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you very much, Julia. That was excellent. As Julia said, we are going to move into the Q&A section of the webinar. Before we do so, we do ask that you take a moment to fill out the feedback form, which should be pushed out to you now. Just ask that you disable your pop-up blocker so you'll be able to receive the form. Now we do have time for a couple of questions. We'll get to as many as we can. I guess we'll start with you, Mike. We have some questions about lean in general. Maybe you could answer. So I guess the first one is, what would you recommend as the first step for moving to a lean organization?
Well, that's probably the most common question I get asked. Where do we begin? This all makes sense, but how do I get started? And in my opinion, you have to start with leadership. Anything else is going to be wasted effort. So leaders need to understand what lean is, what it isn't, and really what it's going to take to transform an organization. Anyone that says we can go through a lean transformation at an enterprise level in 6 months or a year doesn't really know what they're talking about, in my opinion. A transformation is a long-term commitment. So it takes years. However, you can see results in as short as 3 months. Basically, leaders need to get on the same page and understand what this is all about, the components of lean, and really it's leaders that need to develop a consensus of the vision, where we're going to take the company, what our burning platform is, why we are creating this sense of purpose. Once they're clear on that, then it's very important to bring managers and associates on board with proper education, with a clear strategy. Everything that we do has to be tied to measurable results. And we heard 2 excellent case studies today that pointed out that what they were doing was clearly measurable results. So lean is not about, hey, it just feels good, we're doing lean. Lean is about moving the dial in the right direction.
Excellent. And I guess moving from that, do you see any common barriers that companies often face when they're in this going lean period?
Absolutely. I see several. I would say that the most common barrier is people have the wrong conception of lean, and they fall in love with what we call the tools of lean. So we read a book or two, we go to a workshop, we hire a consultant, and we fall in love with a technique or a tool. That could be root cause analysis, that could be value stream mapping, that could be something called A3. The problem is that's really not lean at all. That's simply a component. Lean is really a philosophy of leadership on how we're going to drive ongoing process improvement. So I'd say the number one barrier that I see is a misconception of what lean is and how we need to get there. Number two, and why I was so excited about today's webinar and thankful to be a part of it, is a huge area that many organizations completely overlook is how they're managing information, how people are collaborating, how they're coordinating. And what I'm so excited about is what Google's bringing to the table here. Now technology is caught up with where we are and where we need to be, and IT is no longer needs to be perceived as a barrier to continuous improvement. So the pace of change in process control can actually be matched by IT, which was never the case before. So I'd say those are the two key barriers.
That's great. And let's talk a little bit more about the apps. Tom, this one goes to you. Have you found that adopting apps has helped you to serve your customers better? And if so, if you could tell us a little bit about how exactly.
Sure. Clearly it has. As I briefly touched upon earlier, content-rich communication is important in our market and to our customers. And as a marketer and from a marketing standpoint, I take great pride in being very responsive and connecting to our customers on a very personal level. Unfortunately, this is done many times in a face-to-face manner in such situations as trade shows where I don't have the opportunity to create a presentation or to put some supporting documents to our customers. That being said, having these tools ready when needed and very literally in my pocket, I'm much more prepared to offer value and a superior level of service to our customers at a very earlier point in our relationship. And again, as I mentioned, because of the internal processes that have improved, we've been able to pass on those sorts of improvements to our customers in terms of reductions in turnaround times, not only for the production lead times, as I mentioned, but also in the supporting actions like creating mock-ups, art help, and those sorts of things.
Great. And kind of related to that, Jim, you mentioned how moving to the cloud and with the apps has helped change the way your workers work. Have you noticed any change in the company culture that's come along with that?
Yeah. So one of the changes that we're definitely seeing around the culture is real simple. It's begun to force people and departments out of their silos and into sharing information. I think we're enabling our diversity of ideas to flow more easily, and it's becoming more and more daily practice to share information where we were really hindered in the past. And so I think that sharing and collaboration is a key dynamic in what we're seeing in the change that's being affected because of Google Apps.
Excellent. And I guess going to Jim again. So do you use the cloud for your ERP or MRP systems?
We have various business units, and for our offshore, we're actually using cloud for one of our ERP systems. All of those flow back into a single ERP system that's internal, but we have looked at the possibility that we would place some of those systems in the cloud. From an MRP standpoint, we're highly individualized for our industry and very specific in some of the things that we do. So we have some of our things in private cloud, but it's not in public cloud space.
Great. All right. It looks like we are right up to the hour now, so we're going to have to break here. We have plenty of questions left to answer, unfortunately. Now, please remember this webinar will be available on the industryweek.com website in the next few days. You can feel free to log in, view it again, and send it around to your colleagues as well. We also ask that you join us for our next webinar on July 16th about international freight optimization, balancing effectiveness and efficiency. So with that, I just want to thank you very much for your attendance, and I hope you have a great day.